Welcome, everybody. I am excited to be joined today by Jodi Ann Ray, the CEO of the Texas Society of CPAs. Thank you very much, Jodi, for talking with me today.
Thanks for the invitation, Eric. I'm very happy to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit about the Texas Society of CPAs?
Sure. We represent CPAs as well as those in accounting and finance that work for either CPA firms or in industry or in government or in education throughout the state of Texas. We were founded in 1915. We have about 28,000 members, including our student members. And we are really working to advance the profession across the board in Texas.
Nice. So you're an association, which is a 501c6, right? Which is very different than a 501c3. Can you tell me a little bit about the difference between an association and a charitable organization?
So we would be considered like a trade organization or representing an industry. So we do many of the same functions, but we are really working to advance employment in the industry, advancement as far as education, promoting best practices, ensuring standards are met, really all of those things that would help the industry itself move forward, including representing the interests of industry, the CPA profession at both the state and federal levels.
Okay, excellent. So when you look at COVID-19, obviously it's had a huge impact on every industry in the world. How has that impacted associations?
Tremendously. It seems like all of the calls recently have just been about, how are we evolving? How are we changing? Many associations have pretty traditional business models, and much of their revenue is either based on membership income or on educational programming. I would say those are the two largest drivers. And both of those things have been disrupted for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with in-person programming having to be delayed or canceled or moved to virtual, it has really disrupted the revenue model there. And as far as membership, organizations are making decisions for employees about what they'll be engaged in, what they'll not be engaged in, whether they'll support that. And so both of those very traditional business models have been disrupted substantially. And so now associations are really looking at, they knew they needed to make changes before, but now a lot of those changes are being accelerated because they have to be.
Yeah. So those changes must impact, kind of your strategic thinking and the trends that associations need to look at, whether that, things got amplified during COVID or there's new focus. What are you seeing as some of the major trends of associations?
Well, one of the things that we're doing a lot more is talking with our colleagues, whether they're in our industry or outside of our industry. So I think there is a much more willingness to share, to partner, to collaborate, and perhaps deliver services differently and in many instances jointly. So,
Okay.
for example, my colleagues across the country, we used to meet 4 to 6 times a year. We're now speaking weekly about the impact, what's changing, how we're approaching it. And we've had, since COVID has hit, we've had 2 strategy meetings about working differently together.
Okay, so you think partnerships are going to be more of an opportunity in the future? Like, what is it? Just that, what's driving the consolidation, or what's pushing you guys towards each other?
I think concern for being able to sustain going forward, but I think the new environment has just given people a more willingness to be creative and a push in that direction. And there's been some really great ideas, whether they're within the industry or across industries, about how we can do that better and differently to still serve members.
Okay, and how's that? So if those are the trends affecting associations and you're getting pushed more towards like partnerships or working together in collaborations, how's the accounting profession, being impacted, and what trends do you see, being shaped there?
So obviously, every business across the board has been impacted by the pandemic. And those businesses are in some way, shape, or form clients of the folks that are members of the accounting profession. So as businesses try to rethink what their next steps are and what their models are, they rely very heavily on their CPA and their finance professionals to help put those plans in place, to develop options, and for them to serve as that trusted advisor.
Okay.
As the federal relief packages were introduced, people had to determine, am I eligible? How do I apply? Where do I go? Some micro businesses maybe not even having a business account established. How do I do all those things? So our members who were in the midst of tax season and tax deadlines, all of their work shifted to help advise clients as to how to work through these programs and options to keep their business up and running.
Got it. Okay. So the association is moving towards partnerships to broader service them, and they're shaping more of an advisory role as clients have more needs. Like, what do you see as, because your members are CPAs and beyond, correct?
Correct.
All right. So how do you see their needs changing and the association aligning to fulfill those needs?
Well, I think we've been talking about the need for change, the pace of change for years, and everyone kind of knew that. They knew that they needed to move in that direction, but now it's significantly amplified.
Okay.
So how they adopt to technology is one issue that we're facing. And for some folks, they're trying to make the decision, well, do I retire early or do I continue in the field if I'm willing to make those changes or not?
Okay.
I think the core business model of accounting firms is being challenged and looked at a little bit differently. Things like compliance services are being commoditized. So it's not really the tax return that you're most interested in and that you're really paying for. It's the expertise and the advice that goes into the planning to make sure that the tax return is correct.
So what do you mean the compliance services are being commoditized? Like what does that mean? I'm not familiar with that.
So if you have to do your reporting and your tax filing and your employee reporting, all of that, those are services that CPAs provide to businesses. And so now that's becoming very transactional or commoditized. Okay. So that's not the most important thing that finance and accounting professionals bring to the table. It's really helping businesses plan and foresee things, putting in tax plans, putting in business transformation, putting in succession planning. All of those things are really core to making sure that they're healthy and they stay in business and they're successful. So, but much of their traditional business model is based on you're going to come to me, I'm going to do your tax return, and the right. Tax return cost X, rather than I'm consulting with you and providing services so that you're best established, and then the tax return is really just a work product at the end.
Okay, so if they've got that business model transformation going on, which I assume is going to be a lot of change, not only kind of, from a methodology standpoint and a mindset standpoint, but, from the types of value or education that they would need from associations, how do you gear up to kind of match that? Like that's an ever evolving need in the space, right? So, it's reshaping their business models. What does that mean for associations in terms of servicing? Because, we see that there's a huge level of customization that's needed for clients in the world of association, or needed for members, I should say. But a 501c6 is for the benefit of the industry. And you kind of run into this, we'll call it healthy tension between customizing services to support members, as well as, supporting the industry as a whole.
Well, if you take that business transformation example, we can do seminars and programs and learning opportunities all day long about the concept and the basics. But when it really comes to being able to apply it to your own business and take those practical steps, it's really a different discussion and a different matter. And sometimes it's folks that they can get the concept, but you really have to go into that deeper level of education to help them through that transition. So you're right, how we deliver learning and education has to change greatly. Luckily, we were well positioned for online learning and we can do that quickly. The other thing that needs to happen is, we used to do our planning for programming, as an example, 18 to 24 months in advance.
Yep.
Obviously, that's not acceptable. That doesn't work. So that's one big change that we're having to make and transition through. The other is to help our members understand what is available to them as far as the breadth of services. It's not just those programs that are online. So some of the things that we've been starting to do on a limited basis is we go in and we sit down with one of our members or a firm and we say, what are the things that you're working on? Where are your pain points? What do you need the most? And then we try and deliver them back a proposal that meets their individual needs that they can do on site at their own business with members of their own firm.
Okay, wow. So as much as the education world is getting rocked right now, and I say education, I mean higher ed and colleges and universities. So it's similar to what's happening in associations then.
I'm not as familiar with higher ed. I only from what I see media wise and dealing with professors that we work with in the accounting space. But yes, I think it's very similar change in thinking and in model.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to see. So what do you think some of the big, you had mentioned timelines and talking, looking 12, 18, 24 months out, what do you think the big decisions or the challenges that CEOs are going to face in the next, I don't know, call it 3 to 6 months?
Isn't that interesting that just that concept is so almost overwhelming? But I think one of the things is how do we continue to adapt? And one of the things that's always top of mind for our customers, our members, is talent recruitment and retention.
Okay.
And I think that is going to be, that will always be at the top of the list, but it's going to be at the top of the list for every business. And now that many businesses like professional firms, for example, have been operating in a different environment, they're going to have to think about how they continue to adapt their culture, their business environment, and how they let people complete their work very differently than they would have before. This isn't just going to be a blip and then we're going back to what it used to be. And the expectations that people will have for work is changed. So I think those that are going to be most successful are those that are thinking about that now and are ready to embrace it and make some changes based on, what that top talent is going to expect and need from them.
Are you seeing any shifts in the talent, like the needs for certain types of talent, as that evolves during COVID? Like I get the remote working and the need to learn how to do things differently, but are you seeing like there's demands on different, types of skill sets that are needed?
Definitely in the association space. Some of the traditional roles that we've had have to evolve in order to provide better service. And that's difficult for any type of company to do. But I think our members are experiencing that too. Even the way, for example, they're doing communication is different, the way they're doing business development, the way that they're doing HR training and onboarding. And then you add on top of that advances in technology that's automating so much of their processes. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a big difference in the type of folks that they're going to need to bring to the table. And our industry right now is evolving the CPA exam so that it better reflects the skills needed for the future.
Oh, wow. What does that look like? That's going to be pretty extensive.
Well, one of the things that's so interesting is, if you take, let's just say from 1980 to now, mm-hmm. The amount of rules that people need to be, the regulations that they need to be aware of has quadrupled. The size of the IRS code has grown by 5 times. The amount of knowledge has just grown so substantially, you can't know everything.
Right.
So people do, in some instances, we don't use that word a lot, but they, will specialize in particular areas. So there'll be a core body of knowledge that you need to know in the exam to be able to pass. And then right now, there'll be one of three advanced disciplines that you'll be able to show your advanced knowledge in. And you'll get to choose which of those three disciplines you want to test in.
Okay. And then as an association linking to that industry, are you creating kind of pathways of learning to support that? Or, how does that intersect with the service an association would provide to the rescoping of the CPA exam?
I don't think our industry has been really good at that in the past. But there's lots of more conversation right now about what that looks like.
Okay.
So, for example, if you want to really focus your practice on valuation, how would you get there? If you really want to focus on forensic accounting, what does that look like? If you really want to focus on business analytics. So I think that as CPA evolution, that's what it's called, becomes more recognized and we move forward with it, how people learn and how they choose education and what we provide is going to change with it.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like a major undertaking to redo something that is well known as the CPA exam.
Well, and the really interesting thing about it is, there's one CPA exam. So everybody in the country takes the same CPA exam, even though we're regulated state by state. So everybody, every state board, regulatory body has to be on board with the change in order for it to work.
That's quite the facilitated process then. So as they're trying to build consensus there, and you're seeing business model transformation at the association level, how have you looked at or have to have dealt with change? Because the pace of change, in the past 6 months has been epic, right? And so, how are you managing that as an organization?
Well, I think one of the things that we're working on, particularly as we're in this new virtual environment and we're all working from home, is how to focus on and change our communication, because we don't have those informal interactions.
Mm-hmm.
The way that information flows from teammate to teammate has changed. So really focusing on how do we be present? How do we understand what people need? How do we measure our work differently? And making sure that people feel like they still know where we're going. They still know how their piece of the puzzle fits in. That's been a really big focus, is how we communicate differently.
Yeah, because I got to imagine it's different, just being in professional services is you don't have that face-to-face time. It's really challenging. It's hard to take the pulse of the culture when you're not with each other. And can you replicate that in a remote virtual environment? Or, is there some other way to measure that, or at least pay attention to it? That's got to be really challenging.
I am piloting a tool that we found, an online tool that helps give you some of that measurement of engagement and culture in the organization, and then gives you feedback on particular issues from teammates throughout the organization. And we're just still piloting right now, but so far it's been really valuable information to have.
Oh, you have to shoot that over to me.
I absolutely will.
Would love to take a look at that. So as we move forward, we're always reflecting back on what worked, what didn't work, and things like that over the past 6-12 months, whatever you want to look at. But what's been your greatest learning lesson as a leader over the past several months?
I would say there's been a couple, or maybe a lot, but one of them is that I think everyone has had some piece of this in the last few months, that you and your organization are much more capable of getting certain things done that you expected you were. Mm-hmm. That's really been, I think, neat for everybody to see. And then that, continued concept that we have to all embrace, that it's not failure, it's continued learning, because we have to try it differently to get it right. And if we got it right on the first time, every time, then that would be really impressive, but unrealistic as well. And
Yeah.
then, how do we connect and engage with members differently? Um, and we've had some really positive things come out of it by trying different things. We always do an in-person annual meeting, for example. Well, like everybody else, we had to make that virtual, but our attendance was very high and there was new faces at the table. So we've had opportunities like that present themselves to engage a different set of members than we've had the ability to do in the past.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, those are amazing learning lessons. I think, when you look at just balancing the risk of so many unknowns that are out there because of the pace you're moving and things you have to test out and see whether they work or not. There really needs to be a level of patience and risk tolerance, not only at the board level, but the senior leadership team level, to cut everybody a break, knowing that, the risks you're taking are calculated and they're not, sink the ship risks. They're,
Exactly.
they're above the waterline, but necessary for change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. So thank you.
Thank you. It's always great to speak to you. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing with us.
If you're interested in more videos by great leaders like Jodi Ann, please subscribe. And if you're also interested in finding out more about the Texas Society of CPAs, Jodi Ann and her team, please click the link below. Thank you.